Into the next round versus Liverpool, and I'm very glad that game did not go into extra time because one, we need as much rest as we can get with this injury crisis, and two, the football was very uninspiring. It wasn't particularly enjoyable to watch, but that being said, we did create quite a few chances and could have had 3 or 4, and there was moments in the second half where we did improve and there was some good patterns of play, but all-round play, it wasn't the best. But when you look at the starting 11 that we have, you're not going to play amazing football with it. I'm glad we got the win, but one thing that caught my eye was this. You look at this here, no red card when he intentionally chokes Bruno, and when Casemiro doesn't even choke Will Hughes, he just grabs him and he gets sent off. And it's like, I feel like VAR, it's all about, the player. I feel like decisions is based off the player, the team, because the inconsistencies in VAR is a joke. All right. The game isn't that interesting that we're talking about VAR, because that player should have been sent off. Felipe should have been sent off. Casemiro, do you see? They took 5 minutes to see if they could rule out Casemiro's goal. They were looking at it for 5 minutes. Can we find a way to rule out Casemiro's goal? Looking at it 5 minutes. Casemiro got booked when he didn't even, was it Matty Cash versus Aston Villa? We didn't even touch him. He got booked. Casemiro gets booked for his first foul. And they're looking for 5 minutes to rule out United's goal. They don't even look at the potential penalty on Rashford, but player strangles Bruno, VAR doesn't look at it. Casemiro touch player looks at it. VAR, definitely when it comes to Casemiro, having hard to rule out the goal. You can't tell me otherwise, but I'm not interested in talking too much about VAR. I do want to talk about the game. I do want to talk about areas for concerns. I do want to talk about positive things. All in all, first thing I pick out is 20 shots conceded versus Forest. That is a shot every 3.5 minutes, is it? Every 4.5 minutes. Every 4.5 minutes we concede a shot. Luckily, Nottingham Forest lack that quality with Origi, but we're going to be having Haaland next game. The fact that we concede so many shots worries me. I think Onana had a very good game. He made some very good saves. This is a problem. The shots we concede is a big, big problem. However, that being said, the shots that Nottingham Forest had weren't the best quality. No, we didn't concede 16 because we conceded 16 shots. We had 20 shots. Sorry, brain fart. We had 20 shots. We conceded 16. Brain fart. Just had a moment there. I can feel the comments. Alice, we had 20 shots. We didn't concede 16. I meant to say we had 20 shots, but we conceded 16, and that does worry me. Still conceding 16 shots. There's one every 5 minutes against Forest. We did have 20 shots, but a lot of our shots were wasteful, is what I meant to say. But that being said, the performance was uninspiring. Performance wasn't brilliant, but performance wasn't bad. We weren't bad. We were boring. That's the way I see it. It was just there was some good moments. There were some bad moments. I felt uninspired watching. I felt a bit bored watching. If I was going to, when you look at it, McTominay could have had 2 goals. Rashford should have scored. Bruno scored, or at least done a lot better on his shot. And of course, Anthony hit the crossbar early on. And I do want to talk about individual performances, but I will say this: looking at the lineup, Rashford is not a striker. I'm going to lay this out now. Marcus Rashford is not a striker. He is a left winger and only a left winger. For me, play Forsell and Ahmad centrally. Rashford's got to stay on the left. Garnacho's got to stay on the right. That works. When one player gets injured, the whole front three moves. Rashford to the middle, Garnacho out left. When Garnacho is working so well on the right and Rashford is working so well on the left, leave them there and find an alternative to Højlund, because Rashford is not a striker and he never will be. Play McTominay in Højlund's role. Play Ahmed in Højlund's role. Play Force in Højlund's role. Try Bruno false 9, but let's not move the wingers. The front three was working. The front three was clicking. We scored 4 goals versus Wolves. We scored 2 versus Luton and could have scored 4 or 5. We were scoring goals for the first time all season, and we've messed around this whole front three dynamic. And for me, I didn't like that. Rashford wasn't good today. Rashford was poor, and the difference between Rashford and Højlund, Rashford's playing out of position in the graveyard shift, and he gets absolutely zero service like Højlund does. At least for the team, I don't feel like you get that with Rashford is flopping his arms about, which just frustrates me. I actually think that Rashford should have come off and not Anthony. I thought that Anthony, while he wasn't amazing, was definitely the best of our front three and looked the most on it. Maybe had the extra energy from not playing as much, but I actually understand why Anthony was frustrated to be called off. Now, looking at performance, looking at the team, as I said, the football we played wasn't good. There were still issues. We were still conceding a lot of shots, and that's going to be a problem versus Man City. But when you look at the lineup of Amrabat left back, Lindelof playing, Casemiro, McTominay, Bruno midfield 3, Rashford striker. No manager's going to play pretty football with that. Could we be playing better football than we're playing right now? Absolutely. Are there tactical flaws with Ten Hag? Absolutely. But I look at this in the perspective of no manager in the history of football is going to be playing much better or going to be playing good football with that. They might be playing better football, but they're not going to be playing the expansive football you see at Liverpool. So while I don't enjoy watching us, and I think the football we play is one of the worst in the league stylistic-wise, I'm just looking at how many players are missing and the fact that we got the result. And I think we deserve to win when you look at the quality of chances that we had. Now, talking of individual players, I think Garnacho is absolutely knackered. I'm not going to go in on him. I don't think he had a good game, but Garnacho's played every minute of every game since about like end of October. I think he's knackered, and I think we could have rested him today. I personally think Ten Hag's becoming too reliant on him. He's become Bruno, where he just has to play every minute and doesn't come off. I thought Bruno Fernandes was knackered. I think Bruno Fernandes was likely playing injured, and I thought Bruno Fernandes in that first half was arguably 2 out of 10, one of his worst performances. But I do want to say, in the second half, I thought Bruno was a lot better. Like Amrabat, I thought Amrabat was a lot better. Amrabat came centrally a lot more in the second half, and I thought he really improved. And there was a few players that I think definitely stepped up in the second half, and that was Bruno and Amrabat. And I wanted to share Bruno's game numbers up because despite having a horrific first half, he still, stats-wise, was quite good in terms of 6 key passes, 2 crosses, got the assist, but created 1 big chance, had 2 shots on target. Arguably, his ball striking should have been better and he should have scored the goal. But I do think that the second half, Bruno got back into the game. And I think Bruno's playing injured. He was a doubt for the game. He was hobbling a bit. He looks exhausted, but it wasn't the best first half performance from Bruno, but he did turn it around in the second half. And the thing with Bruno is, and the reason Ten Hag doesn't sub him off is because 1, if you sub Bruno off, McTominay plays as a 10 or Eriksen plays as a 10, so you're going to get worse anyway. But 2, because he can just produce those moments like that great ball into Casemiro. But Charlie made a good point here, and I agree with it. Second half from the team overall was a little bit better. I thought that Amrabat was much better centrally in the second half. 7 out of 7 attempted long passes tonight, and I agree. I wasn't going to go in on Amrabat's first half performance. Amrabat's first half performance wasn't good, but in the areas Amrabat wasn't good, he was playing left back. Amrabat is not a left back. Amrabat is a guy that came injured, was played out of position, then barely played, hasn't been able to get to match fitness or run a games together, and then thrown in a left back again. So I've always felt like more patient with Amrabat. And I thought I was really impressed with him in the second half and when he came centrally. And I do think that I'd love at some point to see Amrabat and Casemiro playing the pivot together. I think they could complement each other well. We've not seen that. Or see Amrabat, Maino, Bruno. Personally, I do think there's a bit of balance there. And I thought that Casemiro got a lot better in the second half when Amrabat came centrally, because Amrabat is actually decent on the ball. And Amrabat has qualities at Fiorentina we saw that we haven't so much seen at United, but I did like Amrabat coming into those central areas. I thought that it really did help us and allowed Casemiro to venture forward a little bit more. And I do think Amrabat had a good second half. And I think in general, we were better in the second half. While it wasn't the prettiest to watch and while it was boring, in general, I thought the second half was decent. Now, one player I thought was particularly good that stood out for me was Diogo Dalot. I think he put 2 really good crosses in. I thought he was the standout player. And people were saying, Ten Hag's not developing these players. Ten Hag's not getting the most out of these players. And there's certain players that maybe have regressed under Ten Hag, but is it that they're just not good enough in general? But I think Diogo Dalot has really become of his own this season. I think my biggest criticism of Dalot was never defending. People always acted like he was bad at defending. I've never had a problem with Dalot's defending. He's not as good as Wan-Bissaka, but he's never been bad defensively. It was his crossing. But I think his crossing has really gone up a level. He put in some dangerous crosses today. I think his ability to make underlapping and overlapping runs, I think he improves the all-round play. He has the ability to invert in midfield. I think there's a really good player in Diogo Dalot. I thought defensively, Lindelof and Varane were fine. I thought Amrabat struggled in the first half, but looked good in the midfield areas, which is his natural position. I thought Onana had a good game. I thought Diogo Dalot had a really good game. I thought Antony, for Antony's standards, was good. Was Antony great? No, but for Antony's standards, he was good. I thought Bruno had a good second half, but was atrocious in the first half. I thought McTominay was absolutely atrocious, but was our most dangerous player in the box. But I think that proves that McTominay is a super sub. I think McTominay's performance today proves that he's a super sub. He doesn't help all-round play because he doesn't do enough on the ball. He's got a lot of limitations. But he's a threat. He could have got 2 goals today. He can score. That's why McTominay is a super sub for me, because he makes those unpredictable runs. Not a starter because all-round play suffers. And the midfield wasn't great. Garnacho was poor. He looked exhausted. Rashford was poor. He was in the Hoyland graveyard shift. Not necessarily his fault, and he's not a striker. So while Rashford will be getting all the hate on social media and all the stick because Rashford's the scapegoat at the moment, you have to look at the facts. Was Rashford one of our worst players? Yes. Was Rashford awful? Yes. And the reason I'd be more critical of Rashford than I would if Højlund put in that performance is because of Rashford's body language, and he wasn't working for the team like Højlund did. Højlund's had games where he's touched the ball barely and barely done anything, but he's put in that work. Rashford doesn't put in that work. So there's frustration there with Rashford, but again, with Amrabat, I'm saying I'm not going to go in on Amrabat's first half performance because he's not left back. Rashford's not a striker. We play Rashford as striker, but he's not a striker. We're still conceding a lot of shots. That's a problem. That's going to be a problem going into Manchester City. The all-round player is boring, but for me, Amrabat, Casemiro, stick them in versus Man City and absolutely part the bus. Absolutely part of the bus versus Manchester City. Maybe we can get something. I do apologise if there's a lag spike early in the video. I do apologise for me saying we conceded 20 shots. Had a brain fart for a second, but please do hit the like, subscribe down below if you're new. Thank you for watching. Bye.